Welcome everyone, I'm HR DaCosta of ScribeMeetsWorld.com, and I'm so excited to be doing this interview here today with two screenwriters from the Phoenix Screenwriters Association who are working on some very amazing projects. So welcome Jessica Brown and Scott Gore.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Yes, it's so exciting because the whole purpose of ScribeMeetsWorld.com is to help writers hold fast to their writing dream. And I think that after everyone hears your story, Jessica, and your story, Scott, I think that's really going to give them that motivation and that inspiration to help them keep on pursuing their dream and to keep on going no matter what. So this is a very exciting interview to do, and I'm so grateful to have you here today. So I thought I would start by just doing reading a brief bio for each of you, and then we will launch into the questions.
Sounds great.
Okay, so we'll begin with your bio, Jessica. Jessica Brown started screenwriting in 2007, and she has pitched screenplays to producers in LA as well as at the Austin Film Festival. In addition, she's been a judge for various competitions, including the Chandler International Film Festival. Currently, she's collaborating with 3 directors as a script consultant or a script supervisor, and she's also secretary of the board of the Phoenix Screenwriters Association. And now we'll move on to Scott. Scott Gore started screenwriting in 2018. Since then, he's written 6 feature films and multiple shorts. 5 of his features have sold, and one of them, Instant Karma, has been produced. It's going to be in theaters in July 2022, and will also be available on different streaming services. Scott's next project, Women in the Maze, it starts filming in April 2022, so just around the corner, in Texas and Arizona. Scott is also the vice president of the board of the Phoenix Screenwriters Association. So I mentioned the Phoenix Screenwriters Association, or PSA for short, a few times. And that is, what is it exactly? That is a nonprofit organization designed to help filmmakers and screenwriters break into the industry by providing various training events and networking opportunities. So I know that PSA played a big role in Jessica and Scott getting where they are right now. That's why they're actually on the board, so they could give back to this organization that gave so much to them. And so we're definitely going to be talking about PSA during the interview, as well as sharing some great writing and marketing tips, and of course, that inspiration. So I guess we'll just dive into the questions.
Sounds good.
All right, so Scott, we'll start with you because the big dream of every screenwriter is to have their screenplay produced and turned into a movie. And now that has happened to you, which is very exciting. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And I'd just love to know, tell me a little more about Instant Karma, the premise of the movie, and also how it came together.
Yeah, absolutely. Instant Karma is just a story of a young man who is down on his luck. Everything's going bad. He feels like he's cursed. And then suddenly out of nowhere, things turn around and start going a lot better for him. But he can't figure out why. And he wants to figure out why. I mean, he wants to make it last, and he wants to figure out why. And so he's in search of finding the magic or the reason for all the good things happening. And kind of like riding a wave. If you think about riding a wave, you know, a wave comes, and you can ride it, but you want to catch that next wave after it. And that's what he tries to do throughout the movie.
So he gets a string of good luck, and he's just trying to make it bigger and bigger. But then all of a sudden, the consequences of that crash onto him.
Yeah, sort of. There's some challenges that he faces in his journey. And he might think that a certain thing is causing it and chase after that for a while, but then find out, well, maybe that's not it. And so it's his journey to discover it.
Okay. And how did the project come together?
Yeah, the director for the film is Mitesh Patel, and he and I connected probably, I guess, 2 months before the Instant Karma project was on the table. And he had read one of my shorts called Reset, and he really liked it. He asked me to write it as a feature for him, which I was able to do. And then I volunteered to work on the set of one of his other films, just as a production assistant to do what was needed. And then the day after that filming finished, he said, "Hey, I've got this project called Instant Karma. Could you do rewrites for me?" And I said, "Sure." You know, I mean, I know the answer is always yes. You know, "Hey, can you write this short as a feature in a hurry?" Yes. You know, I didn't know if I could, but yes is the right answer. So when he asked, I said yes. And so he gave me the gist of what the story was about. And then so I gave him some ideas back on how I thought I could kind of craft it and make it better. And so we did that for a few days, and then we met, and he said, "Hey, how about if you just write your version of it?" So I said yes, which actually I was so glad when he said that, because I had never rewritten anyone else's script, so I wasn't even sure what that was going to look like. So when he said, write your own version, that sounded much more appealing to me.
Right.
And so then I started doing that, and was fortunate to get that done in a week.
Wow.
So it was an exciting things happening quickly when it came together.
Yeah, that I want to come back to that later. Your insane levels of productivity, writing a feature in a week. That is incredible. But I want to stay on Instant Karma in the production process for a second, because you were able to go on the set and see it filmed for a little while. What was that like? And what was the biggest takeaway that you got from that experience?
Yeah, absolutely. Like even before I was on the production, I went to the casting call, which was just like I felt like I didn't even know how to feel. Like I was sitting in the back. I didn't really have anything to do other than observe. And there was the director and the producers and the assistant director and the director of photography, and they've got all these 100 people coming in to audition for different roles. And I'm sitting back there thinking, oh my God, they're saying words that I'd written. They're playing characters that I'd written, and it was just like unbelievable. And then once that was done, about 2 weeks later is when the filming started. And so I was able to be on set a couple days. And again, that was even more, pinch myself kind of experience of like, okay, now they're really actually filming scenes that I wrote with characters and dialogue that I put together. And it was fun to watch it happen. And it was like, yeah, it's actually pretty good. Like, I mean, I wasn't like bragging, but I was patting myself on the shoulder. I'm like, yeah, this is, and then I met the actors, and they, they might ad lib the lines or whatever a little bit. And I'd be like, great, do what you feel, because I know enough about movies to know that, a lot of great lines were ad libbed. Yippee-ki-yay, mother scratcher. By Bruce Willis was.
Yes, Die Hard is a classic.
Yeah, it was not in the script, but they're like, hey, make him like a cowboy. And he came up with that line, and it was like classic. So it was fun to interact with some of the actors and, encourage them. Sure, yeah, go ahead, ad lib, do what you feel.
Okay, one off-topic question, because I love Die Hard so much. Do you two consider it a Christmas movie or not?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, I would agree.
Okay, so I originally was not in that camp, but I have since been convinced
Yeah.
it is definitely a Christmas classic.
Yeah.
Not the conventional Christmas classic,
No.
but it is a Christmas classic.
So,
I like, Scott, what you said about having the actors ad lib the lines. And I think you mentioned before too that filmmaking is a collaborative medium. And by having all these individuals work together, you actually produce something better than you would have on your own. And it's interesting because a lot of times you hear that when a screenplay gets made, you hear someone say, oh, they butchered the screenplay, they butchered my vision. The screenwriter says that. But then when I read all these articles about behind the scenes, what goes on in production, or when you listen to DVD commentaries, it seems that so often the different individuals who put their input into the making of the screenplay and making the movie, they made it better, and they actually produced a better product. And so that the collaborative nature of filmmaking, I think, is actually a big strength.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, when I worked with Mitesh on notes, and we made changes and stuff like that, each edit got better and better. And even one of the actors, Stu Jetson, who played the main character, he had really long hair. He had a beard and really long hair. And there's this scene where he's meeting his mom in a coffee shop, and his mom is kind of like down on him. He's like, yeah, I got fired from my job, and she's like, was it the hair? And so anyway, I met Stu, and I said, hey, I saw your audition and you were so good. Like, I wrote this line for you because I hoped they would pick you. And he's like, oh, wow, that's cool to know. But he said, because I thought, was that just a coincidence that the mom is, giving the character a hard time about the long hair? And I said, no, I wrote it specifically because you had long hair. And so that was really kind of fun.
Oh, wow, that's great. I like
Yeah.
that story a lot. So you mentioned that Mitesh read your short. How did he find you initially? Like, how did he get your short into his hands?
Yeah, there's a Phoenix Independent Film Group that's here in the area, and I joined Phoenix Screenwriters Association 3.5 years ago, and then probably a couple years ago I got into the film group, and just wanting to learn more and make more connections. And there's a lady named Tammy McDaniel who organizes that, and she sends out emails all the time with different opportunities. It could be for actors, it could be for DPs, director of photography, it could be for a sound person, just all different kinds of stuff. And she said, hey, a local director is looking for a screenplay that he could film. Send your log lines. And so I had written 2 features at that point. And so I was like, okay, let me send the log lines for those 2 features. But then I also thought, well, let me send my log line for Reset too, because that was a newer, fresher one. I thought, just include that. Why not?
Mhm.
And so I got an email back saying the director likes this, can you send the script? And so I was like, oh, well, that's cool. Yeah. And so I sent the script, and then, I get another email back. Can you write it as a feature in a hurry? And I was like, what's going on? And then we met and talked about how to write it as a feature and the changes that I thought of. And then I did that, and that one was in a hurry too. That was like over Memorial Day weekend in 4 days.
You transformed that short into a feature in 4 days.
Yeah, from 9 to 84.
Oh, wow. Okay, I'm actually really fascinated by the process of taking a short and expanding it into a feature. Could you just give me one bit of advice on how to go about that?
Oh gosh.
That could be like a sermon or a talk in and of itself, a workshop in and of itself, but just one bit of advice.
So, okay, so basically the log line of the story of Reset was a father and daughter magically go back in time. They're test driving cars, and they have a chance to reset their lives. Okay, and so when he said, write it as a feature, I was like, okay, well, I can expand the, little nugget of an idea I have here. But then I thought, well, okay, so then I need to expand the length of the story as well. So, so that, there's a little more on the front end, giving some backstory, like why do they need to reset their lives? It's like, okay, so they're kind of tragic. He's about to get divorced. His life's falling apart. He's going to lose his house. So that's why they would, want to reset it. And then once he did kind of interact with his younger self, actually has his daughter deliver a letter to his younger self, and it does change what happens. How satisfied is he with that?
Okay.
It's kind of like, it's a question that we often ask ourselves, like, hey, if you could go back in time to one point in your life and tell your younger self something, when would that be, and what would you tell yourself? And would you listen? And then the follow-up question to that is, if you did listen and change things, would you then be satisfied with the way they worked out? And so that's where I just kind of continued that story of, is he satisfied with the way they worked out? And will he have another chance of trying to correct it if he's not?
Okay, I see. So you gave it increasing levels of dissatisfaction to your main character. And then what did he wasn't satisfied enough, so what would he do next to get the happiness that he sought? And that's how you expanded the middle.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, I like that. That's really great advice. Thank you, Scott. Off the cuff. Just right here, right now. So what I'm going to try to do is include the trailer of Instant Karma in post-production and insert it right here if all goes according to plan, because it's a really great trailer. And then everyone will get to see what the movie is about. And then Scott and Mitesh, you were really kind enough to provide 3 pages of Scott's outline for Instant Karma. And I think that is going to be such a great learning tool. So I'm going to link to that underneath this video. And I think if you look at that outline, you'll not only see how pretty much the first half of the movie was structured, but more important, you'll see how those paragraphs of the outline were translated into the scenes in the movie. And I think that's going to give a screenwriter a lot of great insights and aha moments. So that's a really great resource. And again, thank you, Scott and Mitesh, so much for making it available to everyone.
Absolutely.
My life is shit right now. I am on the worst string of bad luck. Nothing is going right. Everything is falling apart. Not just my stupid car. I think I'm cursed.
How are you gonna be a ULEV driver with a piece of junk of a car?
Please don't give me a bad rating. I need this job.
You need some help?
Shouldn't I be asking you that?
Maybe today is the day that everything changes.
Oh, hey. You dropped some money.
Not mine.
So I found money and a bunch of groceries in my car. I think something crazy is happening.
I think that we should ride this wave for all it's worth.
I actually think it was instant karma. Instant karma is when you do good for anyone and something good immediately happens for you.
It seems too easy. So anytime you give anybody anything, it magically comes back to you 10 times.
We're gonna be millionaires.
Well, if we play our cards right, we could be as rich as Jeff Bezos of Amazon. We need to find a way to launder the money.
You do a lot of these night shifts for ULIFT?
Not too many, but I like the variety.
Should be careful. Crazies come out at night.
Got any money?
I know you have my money. Bring me my money, or you're both dead.
Everything was going so well, we have to figure out why all of this is happening.
Did you bring my money?
All right, so Jessica, let's hear more about what you are doing right now. We talked a little bit about how filmmaking is a collaborative medium, and you know that because you are collaborating with 3 different directors right now. So can you tell me a little bit more about what you're doing?
Well, absolutely. So because we're still in production, I can't necessarily talk about the projects themselves.
Right.
But I can certainly talk about the 3 directors and how we came to meet and so forth. And for 2 of them, I'm a script consultant, which means reading the script, providing feedback and notes and suggestions to the director on what they may want to change, and then waiting for their rewrite and then going through the cycle again and again. The 3rd director brought his script into actually one of the PSA events, and we did it as a table read. And he got a lot of very positive feedback, got some interesting other feedback as well. But I reached out to him and said, I really like your story, much like I liked Scott's Reset story. He brought that into the table read as well, and it was well received as well. And I said to him, when you go to produce this, I would love to come be a PA on your film shoot, and just much like what Scott did. And I'm willing to do it for free. I just want to get in there and experience it and help a fellow filmmaker out there. And he said, actually, I need a script consultant. Will you be my script consultant? And or not script consultant, a script supervisor. And I said, sure. I did just like what Scott does. You be the easiest person to work with. And I said, sure, I'll do a script supervisor. And then I immediately jumped onto Amazon and bought 2 books on script supervising and couldn't believe what I had said yes to. It sounds like an easy job, but it's not. There's about a bazillion responsibilities for that role, but it's a very exciting role. And so I'm very excited to get involved in that. But the script consulting is just really collaborating and doing it in a way that's very respectful of the director's vision for their project. but also giving them good guidance along the way, because we're a little more in depth in the storytelling, that to help them so that the story stays on track, that it is exciting for the audience, and meaningful, and doesn't go off the rails, so to speak. So just being the easiest person, and when their script shows up in my inbox, I immediately give it first attention, so that they're not sitting around waiting for me. Just like what Scott talked about, you have to be able to turn stuff around very quickly. So being highly organized, giving it all your focus, juggling and reorganizing your schedule and everything, and then delivering it on time or ahead of time if you can, and then wait for the next round again.
How do you maintain your patience in terms, because you're always waiting for the director to give you the screenplay to work on, and then you have to be working on the same project again and again and provide rewrites on the same project instead of moving on to something new. You don't have that luxury. How do you maintain your patience during this process?
Well, I will work on my own material. So when I deliver notes or suggestions, I know there's going to be, depending on how fast the director is moving on his project, his or her project, then I just turn around and work on my own material. And I always have stories that I'm working on. And so that kind of keeps my brain engaged in terms of creativity, gives me a different story to focus on. And then as soon as their project comes back into my inbox, I'm immediately sitting down with it and listening to their notes. If we can do a Zoom meeting or an in-person meeting to get their feel for, you know, what are the changes that they're looking for? What were the scenes that worked really well for them? What are the scenes they're really struggling with? And then maybe doing a little workshop with them as the director. And sometimes they have the time to do that with you. And sometimes they say, no, go take it, go off and make it happen, you know? So you sit down and figure it out, but take a lot of detailed notes when you're talking, so that you really understand what is going through their creative mind, so you can try and capture that on the page.
Right, that makes sense. Now, you mentioned a script supervisor has a lot of responsibilities. Could you just describe maybe 2 or 3 of them?
Oh, yes. So when I met with the one director, we met at a Starbucks here in Phoenix, and he said, I really want you to be my script supervisor because you understand screenwriting. And I said, oh, I'm thrilled, you know, and I was very honest, always be transparent. I said, I've never done script supervising before. And he says, oh, it's really easy. You just keep the continuity going, and you make sure that we've got the coverage. And I thought, continuity and coverage. Okay, I can do that. Well, what that means is you have to do a lot of prep work. As soon as the script has been locked in and no changes are going to be made at this point, then you get the copy of the script, and you need to go through and figure out all the camera angles that you think the director of photography is going to shoot. You try and anticipate what and how many. So on one scene, there could be 7, 8, 9 or more screenshots. Takes, as they call them. So one might be over the shoulder of one actor, and then they do it again over the shoulder of the other actor. They may do it from a distance. I know Scott's agreeing with me because he watched them do that on his movie. And so you try and anticipate all of that. And then you also want to look for, you set up all these forms to keep track of what's called continuity. So say, for example, in a scene, one of the actors takes a drink out of their glass, and they continue to talk, and they pace the room and everything, and then cut, they have to do it again. You have to remember how full was that glass. And then the prop people have to come in and put it right back to that exact same amount, because when they shoot the scene again from a different angle, your audience will notice if that glass is slowly going down, and they're like, whoa, wait a minute, that doesn't make sense. So that's part of the continuity. And then again, films are not shot in order. So you have to keep track as a script supervisor on what day are we shooting, the day of the story. And did the protagonist have a pink hat on instead of a red hat? You cannot, because again, as they bring the film together, you have to have that continuity of everybody in the clothes on the same day and so forth. So there's a lot of details in there. And fortunately, I was able to find 2 amazing books written by wonderful script supervisors who've done that for years in Hollywood. And I've read those books about 8, 9 times now, and I've been developing my own forms and everything. So we'll see. We'll get into it, but it is an exciting time. And I think one of the critical things that Scott brought out that I would totally agree with too as well is always ask if you can help a filmmaker on their film. Offer to be a PA, a production assistant. You'll be amazed at what kind of doors will open for you.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point that both of you are making. Try to take the initiative in the way that you can. Like, keep your eye out for different opportunities and then put your hat into the ring and then see what happens.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, because a lot of times I think screenwriters, they wait for the opportunities to come to them, but you need to kind of go out and find those opportunities yourself once you have obviously a level of experience that you've attained, because like both of you said, Jessica and Scott, both of you said, like, you have to be able to produce material within a very short turnaround time. So you need to have that background, that buildup of skills before you can go out and do that.
Not necessarily.
Oh, okay.
I mean, if you love it and you want to learn, like I've got a son, he's starting community college, wants to study screenwriting, probably knows more about screenwriting than I do. Yeah, I'm encouraging him, just go and be a part of film shoots. You know, even if he can't write, he's going to meet people, he's going to learn. You know, there's so much you can pick up along the way that's going to benefit him when he does start writing.
That's true. The on-the-job training philosophy.
Exactly.
Yeah, totally agree. Yeah,
there's certainly merit to that. But then if you got the assignment to write something, I would like personally to have a little experience writing under my belt and not have that be my on-the-job training, but definitely learning on a film set. I think that could be really valuable before you start to write.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to touch quickly on what Jessica was saying about how she said yes to the script supervising, then got the books and found out what it was. I remember when I said, you know, I'd like to volunteer on set, because he said it was a Friday, Saturday, Sunday shoot. And I said, okay, great. I can take Friday off of work and, you know, do the weekend. And then he put me in touch with the person that was organizing everything. And then she gave me the schedule, and it was like, okay, Friday at 6 p.m. until Sunday morning at 7. And then, or until Saturday morning at 7. And then Saturday night at 7 until Sunday morning at 8. And then Sunday night at 10 until Monday morning at 11. And I just remember thinking, if I had known the schedule, I never would have volunteered. But thank God I didn't know what I was saying I was available for.
So you're glad you didn't know what you were getting into before you said yes.
Yeah, exactly. And I was like, I didn't even stay up that late when I was in my 20s. So 3 all-nighters in a row was quite a challenge, but you know, I rose to it. I learned a lot. I had fun doing it, and it opened doors. So yeah, so say yes sometimes, even if you don't know what you're saying yes to.
That's a good piece of advice. And then Jessica, just to go back to the 2 directors that you're working with as a script consultant, how did you find them, or how did they find you?
Well, one of them found me through PSA in the events. Like I mentioned, he's the one that he came into the Writers Insight workshops, which is a table read. And through that, he was really impressed. I was the moderator, still am. And he was impressed with how I was giving feedback to the writers, how I was keeping the writers engaged, and we were progressing through all the different scripts. And so he reached out to me on the side and said, hey, I'm going to shoot this film. I want to put it together, but I would love to get your assistance helping me get the script in shape. And then the second director, one of the other directors, works in Los Angeles. He works for a major company, and he was a friend and fellow filmmaker in film school with my son Brock, and they collaborated together on projects. And he had even taken one of my son's short films, a script for a short film, and they shot it at Panavision. And he reached out to me because one of his latest projects has a character that is based on my son and their friendship. So that's that one. And then the third one I was taking a online class with a UCLA professor over here in Phoenix, but he was in LA. And we had people from all over the world in this class. It was amazing. And there you are, rubbing shoulders, so to speak, online. And you get assigned each week to work with other writers on projects and so forth. And so I got teamed up with another writer, a young filmmaker who lives in LA. And we had a great time, and our little mini script did really well in the class. And so he again reached out to me later after the class was over and said, hey, I would really love to see if you could help me. I'm putting this script together and I'm going to be shooting it probably mid to late 2022 and into 2023. And I said, sure. I did the Scott Gore thing. I said, yeah, sure, I'll do it and jump in. And I think you really do need to jump in. You really need to take a risk and try it, and you're going to learn. And, you know, if you get those opportunities, those doors opening up to collaborate, jump for it, because you're going to learn, you're going to build connections, and you're going to have fun. You're going to have so much fun along the way.
Yeah, so the big takeaway I'm getting from you two in terms of getting your foothold into the industry is to say yes, even though you might not completely feel ready for what you're saying yes to, and always also be looking for opportunities because you don't know how they're going to arrive on your doorstep, and they can come in different forms.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay, so both of you have now gotten basically your big break in, but to reach this place, it starts with having that dream of writing a screenplay in the first place. So it's kind of like your origin story as a writer. So I would just love to know for both you, Scott and Jessica, when was the moment when you thought to yourself, maybe I can write a screenplay, and then kind of walk me through how you got to where you are now.
You want to go first, Jessica?
Sure. Okay. So I'm a mom. I have 4 sons, Brock, Chase, Parker, and Hudson, and they've each gone off into different directions. And I've been equally proud of all 4 of them. It was my oldest son, Brock, who went into filmmaking, and he attended Scottsdale Film School, a little school out in South Scottsdale in the Pima cotton fields. And it's a beautiful little school. And I was working full time in corporate America, and of course, raising his brothers. And he would ask me to come and be an extra in his film school, his different films for film school and student films. And usually my back, I was in I was in a group session, and the camera was over my back. So I have a very famous back that everybody has seen, but and then I would buy lunch and dinner for the cast and crew and so forth. And then I was getting up the next day and going into work. But it was coming home from one of those sessions really late at night. And Brock asked me, he said, Mom, how come you're not writing? And I thought about it, and I'm thinking, well, okay, I'm raising you and your brothers, and I'm working full time, and I got all this stuff going on. But you know what? It hit me like lightning. I should be writing. And so I asked him if he would share with me his final draft software, which is the software that screenwriters write on. It's one of many out there. And he showed it. He downloaded it onto my laptop, and he spent a few minutes with me showing me how to use it. And then I sat there and I wrote just a silly little scene, and I fell head over heels in love with writing. I mean, head over heels. And it wasn't that I want to do this, it was I have to do this. And so I started writing and started doing a lot of research on it and so forth. So it's been, I'm still in love with it every bit as much as I was. I started that 15 years ago. And today I still get excited working on a screenplay, coming up with a new story, going through all the different phases of the screenwriting. I love working with other screenwriters on their projects. It's exciting to me, even though it's not my project. I love to see what they're working on. And if I can help them in any way, I love to do that. So, and then I took some classes along the way locally as well as over in LA. And then unfortunately, I lost my son Brock at the age of 26. He was born with a very rare combination of heart defects. And so unfortunately we lost him, and I was completely devastated, and but I wanted to keep writing. And I kind of felt like that was the gift that he gave me, that I would have that, after he had passed away. And so I started searching around for groups that writers so I could spend that time with them. And I found through Meetup a group that had just started a few months prior in Phoenix called the Phoenix Screenwriters Association. And I went to the very first event, which was a luncheon with Richard Walter, who is the famous UCLA professor. And here he was with 20 other writers and myself, and face to face listening to him. I was just amazed. I couldn't believe that here I was sitting with a very famous professor teaching us all about writing. So it's just been a combination of the PSA Association, working with other writers, and then working on my own material.
Oh gosh, you told me part of the story before. It's so beautiful. It gets me every time. And Brock seems like a very, very special person. And it's really nice that he's sort of inspiring you, I think, to continue with this. He's like your big motivation, partly.
Oh yeah, so with that original copy of Final Draft, I always upgrade my software off of his original license. So I always have a part of him with me on each script. So, yeah.
Oh, that's really beautiful, Jessica. Wow. Okay. This is like an awkward transition, but I guess
sorry.
we will. No. We will now ask Scott to share his writing journey too.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's always great to hear Jessica's again. And she's been a big part of helping me in my journey. But where did it start? I guess probably the first movie I went to as a young kid. I loved movies. I've always loved movies. I remember my dad taking us to movies. I remember going to drive-in movies with our neighbors when I was like 8 or 9. I remember one time I was playing with neighbors in the front yard, and we would play wiffle ball out there, and just, when neighbors played with each other outside, and Mike and Johnny, and they're like, yeah, our dad's taking us to the movies tonight, to the drive-in. But they didn't invite me. And I was like, man, like I really wanted to go. So I went and told my mom she was going grocery shopping. I said, buy one of those big bags of popcorn. So she did. And so that night after dinner, I took that popcorn and walked down between the yards, and I sat across the street on the curb with a big bag of popcorn. So when they came outside with their dad to go to the movies, I was just sitting there.
You're like, I'm the snacks. Come on, you have to take me with you.
So I got my invite and went to the movie that night. So I've always loved movies. I passed that on to my kids. I have actually 5 kids, 3 boys and 2 girls, and they love movies. And one of my sons studied screenwriting in college, and I thought that was really cool. I remember when he showed me some of his screenplays. I was never asked to be an extra. I don't know if any of his stuff was filmed, but I thought, oh, that's really cool that he's doing that. And most of my career, really even up till today, has been nonprofit work, helping disadvantaged kids, working in the inner city, moving my family into a housing project, and helping the kids and families there through a learning center and different stuff, and summer camps, doing international relief and development with refugees and earthquake victims. So that took a lot, that took a lot of my energy. I was trying to save the world. Anyway, I found time to watch movies, and Dean studied screenwriting. And so a couple years ago, it's kind of going through a difficult time. There's a picture up here on the wall. It shows me and my friend Kevin, and we were best friends in college, ever since college. And about 6 years ago, he committed suicide. And that was, the biggest loss I'd ever experienced in life. And he was like a soulmate to me. We were just close and tight about everything. And so there was a rage of emotions swirling around, not knowing what to do with them. And so I was like not in a good place. I was just like kind of self-destructive, didn't want to get better. I just wanted to be sad. Like I didn't think I deserved it. And so I was kind of swirling down. And one morning I woke up with I guess it was a dream continuation, like an idea in my head of a scene. And it was kind of from childhood, but like with a twist to it. And I was like, oh man, that would be like a really good scene in a movie. And it was like a Halloween. And I remember my brother and I were out trick-or-treating one year as teenagers. And we got to this house and the storm door was closed, but the front door was open and we could look in and we saw a bowl of candy there. And we're kind of got a little greedy. And so like one of us held the door and the other ran in and took the whole bowl and we took off. And we made it fine. But anyway, that scene was in my head. And someone from the other room saw the person taking something else from the table and just screamed, "Bring them back." Whatever they took meant a lot. And it was like almost a monstrous type guttural scream. And so I was like, oh my gosh, like that's an idea for a movie. And I told my son who'd studied screenwriting, he's like, well, that's a scene, Dad. You know, that's not quite a whole movie. I'm like, well, I got something there. I'm like, I want to write a screenplay. So so he gave me some of his books to read, Story and Screenwriter's Workbook, and I read through those. And so that was my goal, was like just to write a screenplay. And I had that one idea for that one scene. And then I read an interview by Karen Gillan, a Scottish actress who made movies as a kid. And she was talking about horror movies being her favorite genre. And like that interview totally influenced the direction of my first screenplay, because the main character is named Karen. Her parents are Jack and Wendy. And Karen Gillan's favorite movie was The Shining and Jack and Wendy Torrance. Anyway, it totally influenced, like, it was like right at that time where I was getting ready to do this. And then, so I started writing it. And like Jessica said, it was like right from the get-go, it was like the coolest thing I'd ever done. Like, the most life-giving thing I had ever done. And I had my little index cards. I still got them over here in a box. And you know, I put them on my bed and figured out the order for the first, you know, act. I mean, I didn't even know there was act 1, 2, and 3 until I started reading these books, but I put the cards there and I'd pick one up and then I would just start typing that scene and action descriptions and slug lines. And it was, yeah, it was great. And I didn't have a specific goal other than to write it. And then after a month or so, I realized, oh, I'm averaging about a page a day. And so I said, okay, well, my goal is then to finish it in 100 days, because it was going to be about 100 pages. And so then as I was getting close to the end and getting close to the deadline, I realized, oh, wow, if I finish it in 98 days, I'll finish it on Halloween. And the opening scene and the last scene are both on Halloween. So I was like, okay, there's a little serendipity here. And so I did. So I had it done. I was like, okay, I did this. I met my goal. I had one goal. I met it. And then I printed it out. I took it with me on a trip and I read it out loud. And I said, it doesn't totally suck. And I was thrilled. Because if it totally sucked, I would have said, okay, well, I did it. I'm done. You know, let me see if I can go learn a guitar or something. But it didn't totally suck. And I thought, okay, I got to work on this, you know? And so then I remember bringing the first 10 pages to Jessica's workshop up there at Barnes and Noble at Tempe Marketplace.
Yeah.
And I'm passing them around. I'm so excited. They're finally going to read it. And oh my God, it was like trudging through mud. It moved so slow. It was like, oh, it was like quicksand. It's just sinking. And I think there's like 1 million exclamation marks in there. Someone made a comment about that. I think Jessica said, do you want to write a novel? And I was like, no. And all kinds of helpful feedback that crushed my soul. But not really. I mean, it just realized, okay, I got a lot of work to do. But then I started the rewrites and I was like, oh my God, this is more fun than the writing. You know, and so I just kept at it, and it was 98 pages. And just the last thing I'll say on it is Karen, the main character, her best friend is her sister. Sandy, and Sandy commits suicide, and Karen doesn't handle it well. And so she's self-destructive and she starts hurting others. And so it was almost like I was telling my story through the life of other characters. And it was incredibly therapeutic and helpful. I mean, I was going to a therapist as well. But like I included scenes with a therapist, I remember, and showing, I send them to my therapist. It's like, does this sound like realistic dialogue? And but it was life-giving, just the act of doing it, but it was also therapeutic, helping me to process some of the difficult stuff I was going through in life. So that's how I got started.
And thank you, Scott, for sharing all of those details. I knew part of your story. I didn't know all of this, and this is really interesting. And I think a lot of times when I work with writers, there's an emphasis on the commercial viability of a project, which is great because I think writers deserve to make a living from their writing. But you both touched upon there are other benefits to writing as well. One is that personal satisfaction that you get just from the act of creation. And then that's something I thought about, but only recently from hearing your story, Scott, and also talking to a couple other writers, I realized that writing can initiate a very deep healing process. And that is another benefit to writing that sometimes gets overlooked. And actually, on that note, Jessica, did you ever, when you're working on your screenplays, did you ever find that that was helping you process your grief over Brock's passing?
Oh, absolutely. I'm so totally with Scott on this. And while I've never had to face suicide or anything like that, which is absolutely very traumatic, death and losing people that you love, absolutely. Writing is an amazing process that anyone that is writing, whether it's for a hobby or you want to do it professionally, it's incredibly healing. And even if you just sit down and write out your feelings, even if you're not doing the screenwriting or the novel writing, talking about today is a good day or today's, kind of a rough day and here's what I'm going through, that kind of a scenario. But what's fun about the creativity is you can heal yourself by taking your main character, who probably has a lot of yourself in that character, and putting them through the challenge of healing. And in the process of your hero healing, you yourself start to heal. And so it is a very amazing process. And it definitely, Brock has been gone. He passed away in 2009, and that's been almost 13 years ago. And yeah, it's still very healing for me. Yeah.
Yeah, I can see that. And I'm sure Brock would be so proud of you, Jessica, and so happy for you, not just because of what you've achieved, but through the way that you're giving back through PSA and inspiring a new generation of filmmakers like himself. And speaking of PSA, what is one of the programs that you think you benefited from the most as a PSA member?
So I think for me, I love all the programs, and I'm not just saying that because I'm on the board of PSA. I actually really love that we offer so many different programs. So like the first one, the first event I ever went to was called The Creative Journey. And that's where we have professionals come out and talk to us face to face. And we'll go from everything from their process to what a day in their life looks like, to how you deal with professionals in the Hollywood arena or the industry. I also love the table reads. It's so much fun to get in there and act and be a part of it, or to hear your pages read and understand what's working, what isn't. We had also through the pandemic, the Writers Lounge, which was a working table or a working writer's room where writers could just pop in and out as they wanted to, and they could bring in a problem that they were struggling with, such as a log line that wasn't working, or developing a character for a particular story, or the story arch of their overall story that they were working on. And all the writers that were in the room, it was whoever showed up that week, and we would help the writer work on whatever story problem they were having. And pretty soon we had people coming in from all over the world that were wanting help on various things. And it was really fun. I mean, I felt very satisfied in giving back and in helping other writers. So, and then I also love the creator of PSA, Carlo Dialmo. He started it by giving us a complete picture of what the industry is about. So he brings in sales agents, producers, directors, managers, all kinds of people that have some sort of touch the story process in a different way. And so it makes us to be a more holistic writers and have a better view. And so I think to single out one little tiny thing, oh, that's kind of hard because I love everything. What about you, Scott?
Yeah, I mean, I would ditto everything you've said. I've loved all the meetings. I remember we had an all-day workshop with Warren Zide from American Pie, I think. And that was just fascinating. It was just kind of like, it seems like if, when I first started writing, like Hollywood was a million miles away. And then like Hollywood was right in front of me, giving an all-day workshop. And it was like, man, I was just soaking it up. And I remember sat next to a lady who said, yeah, this is my first crack at screenwriting. I've written 40 novels. And I was like, what? And she's like, yeah, I'm a professor, but I get up at 5 and I write for 2 hours every morning. And I was like, oh my God, I could never do that. Anyway, like it was encouraging, but like also like, oh, like that's not me, so that's another thing that I've learned through it. It's like, don't compare yourself to others, but just learn tidbits from others. Like, oh, okay, well, she sets aside a certain time of day, I do it a different way. So that I remember that one was really good. A new event, I don't know if Jessica's been able to go to any of them yet, is that we got a grant from the city of Tempe. And so one of the things we're doing with that is that we have a film viewing once a month. Back in December, the movie was starring Bruce Willis, Christmas classic. And so we have an instructor, professor from ASU, Chris Lamont, who comes and hosts those events. And so that was what you asked us earlier. That was one of his questions. At the end of the movie, I'm going to ask you if you think this is a Christmas movie. And so, like with that in my head, and fresh eyes on it, it's like, yeah, that's clearly a Christmas, Christmas music throughout, blah, blah, blah. But anyway, just, once a month watching a movie and then having a screenwriting professor who's had movies made with Bruce Willis, which is interesting to hear his experience of working with a big star like that on a screenplay he'd written. But just giving us background on the writings, who was the writer, there was different writers. I remember I was at a unrelated Phoenix Screenwriters Association screenwriting conference in Atlanta, and I met Stephen D'Souza, who was, one of the writers, and he was brought in to make it more comical. So he wasn't the original screenwriter, but he was one of those that was brought in specifically for that task. And I met him in a workshop, and I asked him to sign my book. And maybe this is why I can write fast at times, but he said, write like the wind, and he signed it for me. And I was like, oh my God, Stephen D'Souza. So, but anyway, that's another event that is really good. So there's all kinds of, and we do social stuff too. I mean, you mentioned the lounge, but we do socials where it's just get together, hang out. In the past, we've done an Oscars party and stuff like that, just kind of fun events. So it's a great organization. I know I wouldn't be anywhere close to where I'm at now without PSA. So
I agree. Yeah.
Yeah, Scott, you mentioned that Jessica gave you feedback on one of your, I think the very first screenplay you wrote, right? And so that seems like I should seg into that, because you have this program, the Writers Insight Workshop, which Jessica, you alluded to earlier. And so that's a program where screenwriters can bring up to 15 pages of their work, and they get constructive feedback on those pages in a friendly environment, which is co-moderated by you. So I'm just curious, what is your approach to providing feedback to writers?
So the Writers Insight Workshop is the writers will sign up in advance. You go through Meetup, and they will sign up. And then for those that are bringing pages, they will put in the comments section that they're bringing pages and how many, and then we rank them in order of who responded first, second. And it's a 2-hour table read. So if everybody brings 15 pages, that means only 3 sets we can read that night. And then everyone gets about 15 to 20. We lost her.
Just keep going.
Okay, so we, here she comes. So we have, they bring in up to 15 pages, and then they each get about 15, 20 minutes of feedback, depending on what's going on and so forth. And it's really interesting to watch how the writers pick up and understand, no matter how seasoned you are or how new you are as a writer, hearing your script read, you will automatically pick up on what's working and what isn't working. I know when Scott said he brought his first script in and it felt like it was just dragging on and on and on, he was picking up a very valuable point of what he needed to do to pick up the action or pick up the dialogue, those kinds of things. So a table read is really an amazing process that every writer, whether you're new or seasoned, hearing feedback from other writers and watching your audience experience your story is an amazing experience. Writers love table reads, and industry professionals, we've had many come through PSA over the years. They all regularly recommend all writers should regularly attend table reads, because that's how you're going to improve your writing, is to hear how your audience is experiencing it. And yeah, you do have to have a little bit of a tough skin. And it's, so easy to pounce on what is not working. But when you go to a table read, you should be able to hear what is working really well in your script, and then what is not, the audience is confused about or not clear on. And then as writers, we want to help each other. So then we give feedback on, hey, here's some suggestions. You may want to consider this. And you want to do it in a way that's helpful to the writer, not punishing or personal. So table reads really become an exciting way for writers to grow and then to interact with other writers too.
And what has been one of your favorite experiences as a moderator?
Oh boy, I'll tell you. So Scott's one of them. Scott is one of my favorite. It's been really fun to watch his stories come alive. And I'm just so excited when he shares with us that he's got another script that's going to be made, because I know how hard he works and how hard he works on his stories, and he listens very carefully. So he's one of our amazing success stories. And again, it's because he didn't debate at the table read. He didn't defend his work. Instead, he asked questions, he listened, he took it in, and then he went off and worked on his script and worked on improving the scenes, or maybe he changed some dialogue or what have you. And I think writers need to understand it's not personal. It has nothing to do with you as a person. It's helping to bring that story to life and to make it the most interesting and entertaining that you can. And so if you're open to hearing that feedback, and sometimes you may not agree with the feedback, you may think, oh, that's crazy. What are they thinking? But don't. Take it and write it down and then walk away and then think on it. And what'll happen is you'll either see the note within the note, you'll understand what it is that the other writer was giving you feedback on, or that idea may lead you to an even better idea that you then incorporate into your script or into your scene. So those are the absolute exciting things to watch happen. And Scott is absolutely one of our shining stars. I have absolutely loved having him come in, and plus he gives good feedback too.
That's great. It seems that you're again sort of speaking to that, the value of a collaborative nature of writing, that when you are getting notes, a lot of times if you listen to what the person providing the feedback is trying to say, that could help you actually make your idea even better than what you anticipated.
Absolutely.
If you don't get too defensive about it, that is.
No, and don't take it personally. And it's a little hard in the beginning. New writers, you feel very vulnerable, and your work is out there. It's like taking your baby and having everybody pass your baby around and make comments about your baby. But you over time, if you continue to keep engaging and doing that, you get used to it's not about you, it's about the writing, and ask probing questions to understand, and then be respectful of your audience. You know, they gave up a part of their life to spend that they will never get back, that they spent reading your script and giving you feedback on. And so it's always important to say thank you. Thank you for the feedback. Even if you don't agree with it, it's okay. Just thank them for taking the time to read your work.
Oh, that's great advice. If your instant reaction should be to every note, thank you, and then just leave it at that, and then digest the notes in private.
Yes.
So I think that's a really great tip. Thank you, Jessica. Oh, okay. I just practiced it in a way. So you mentioned the value of a table read, but in the Writer's Insight Workshop, it's basically other writers doing the table read. But PSA has another program called In the Works, where everyone gathers at a pizza parlor and you actually have local actors reading your pages. So I know that the screenplay has to meet certain requirements in order to be accepted into that program. But let's say a screenwriter has that happen and they have their pages read by actors now. What kind of takeaways do they normally walk away with? Scott, do you want to field that?
Yeah. That's a really fun one. I remember the first time I submitted there to be read at In the Works, and of course I thought, Spielberg would be calling me soon, wanting to, direct my first screenplay, and they're like, yeah, your script needs a lot of work before it comes to In the Works. So I cleaned it up a little bit, and I brought it there, and like I was so excited. And as I said, my kids are into movies. I have a daughter who's into acting, mostly theater productions, but they were there and they read some of the roles, and so that was like really fun. When other people are having their scripts read, they oftentimes bring friends and stuff like that to kind of be a part of that with them. So it's kind of fun to share the journey, because most of the journey is like sitting here in front of a screen typing by ourselves. So it's cool to like have people at that one where they can listen. I've had other friends that have come and just listened to portions of scripts being read. So that's part of the fun side to it. But yeah, having actors with different voices, bringing out the characters, making the characters come alive, it's really thrilling. My current script I'm working on is called Albert, and it's about Albert Einstein. And so I've brought 2 sets of pages to the In the Works this year. And most recently, it was like the second 16 or so pages. And all of the people reading the roles did a really good job of making them sound like unique characters. And that's fun, because you write, you type, you hear it all in your voice. I maybe make my voice a little higher or something for some of the female roles, but it's pretty much my voice. So it's just really good to hear it and say, okay, yeah, this sounds good. That doesn't sound good. I remember similar when I was at the casting call and I was hearing different people read the different characters. You might hear 10 people like read a specific character, and you're like, oh, that sounds much more authentic. And they said it different. So like you go back and you change your dialogue when you hear that, which makes me think that we should even tell the actors to feel free to ad lib it In the Works. I don't think we specifically do that, but I think I'd be fine with giving them that freedom, because again, hearing it said a little differently is especially so that the dialogue rings true. And then afterwards, the feedback is great. It usually starts with the actors first and then people in the audience. And a lot of times it's about pacing, it's about dialogue. Since they're just getting a portion of the story, we kind of explain, the whole log line of the whole story and what portion this is. But the feedback is always beneficial. But like Jessica said, it's like you're bringing your baby, like you love this baby, and you've been working so long creating this baby, and it's so beautiful to you, and then you bring it there, and then it's hard to hear someone say, oh, baby's got big ears, or did you drop it on its head? You know, why are one eye looking this way and the other that way? And you're like, what? And then you're like, oh God, yeah, they're right. So to be there and to not defend it, it's like everything in you wants to defend your baby, but to say, okay, yeah, they're, like Jessica said, they're giving up their time, their skills, and to help me, and so I want their feedback, you know, and just asking questions. So every time I bring it there, I'm like, I get insight, I get valuable feedback, and it gets better, and that's the goal.
Yeah, I can see how it would be really valuable in terms of, okay, so we're writers, we're used to dealing with text, and we want to put everything in the text. But then when you hear the dialogue spoken by actors, you see how they're infusing the words with their own emotion. And so that means that there's text that you don't need, and that you have this propensity for overwriting. And that's, I think, a natural tendency for writers. And you need to be able to nip that tendency in the bud in order to elevate your dialogue writing skills. And so this seems to be one of the fastest and easiest ways to do that.
Totally.
So right now, though, this feature is only available in person, right? There isn't a online equivalent. So if PSA had a suggestion box, I would put in the suggestion box if a online equivalent could be created. And if not, at least anyone who's watching this video right now, try to recreate this experience yourself. You know, try to take the initiative like we were talking about earlier, and maybe reach out to a local drama department of a university or college near where you live and see if you can get access to a group of actors who would be willing to read some of your pages, because I think you're going to learn so much.
Yeah, and I would agree with you. And you've got two of the board members here of PSA, so we will definitely put that on the April board meeting as one of our agenda items to talk about. But yeah, absolutely. The whole experience of getting feedback and listening to it and delighting an audience is an amazing experience for a writer. And it's one that you should expose yourself to on a regular basis, if at all possible. Yeah.
So that's been a really great learning experience. And you guys, both of you have learned so much through your experience with PSA and also through your own writing. So if someone came up to you and they are a beginner, they just got the idea, hey, I want to write a screenplay, what would be your #1 tip for them for a complete beginner?
Okay, so my #1 tip is a 3-parter.
Okay.
Much like first, second, and third act. You can't take the screenwriter out of the writer, I'm sorry. But if they're brand new, I would say, or new to writing, I'd say write every day. Even if the writing, you don't feel like writing or you're really struggling with writing that day, work on your outline, develop your characters, do something. Because in the process, even if you don't like your writing for that day, you still learn something. And it helps to establish that habit of getting in there and writing every day. And then the second part of that, Act 2, would be to find scripts to read. And there's a lot of websites, well, there's quite a few websites out there that you can look at scripts for free. And I would say read scripts and learn and watch what other writers are doing. Read how they're setting up scenes, how they're paying them off, how they make interesting characters and so forth. And then finally, one of my favorites is, I'm a lifelong learner. I love a good book, and on the craft of screenwriting, some of my absolute favorites was written by an author who goes by 3 initials. And that would be your books. I absolutely love your books. And so I would tell a beginning writer, invest in some of really good books on the craft and understanding screenwriting, because there is so much to learn, and soak up as much as you possibly can. And those books right behind you, those are all some of my very favorite books.
Oh, thank you, Jessica. Now I can't promote item #3 because that'd be too self-serving, but I do want to say that my #1 tip for a complete beginner would also be to cultivate a daily writing habit. That's where I think everyone ideally should start. But what about you, Scott? What is your #1 tip for a beginner?
Oh, great question. I think it was Hemingway that said, write drunk, edit sober. But I say that jokingly. I'm not encouraging people to get drunk before they start writing. But what the book that helped me the most was by Sid Field, the Screenwriters Workbook. And it just kind of laid it out, like what the process looked like. Like I had no idea what I was doing. I read that book and I was like, okay, I have a plan. I have a map now. I can just follow this. I can get my index cards, et cetera, and just work on getting through the process. And I think also like having the attitude, I forget where I heard this first, but it's a famous saying that's kind of turned sideways. If it's worth doing, it's worth doing poorly. And most people have heard if it's worth doing, it's worth doing well. And I think that stops us from doing so much, especially if you tend to be a perfectionist. You know, you don't want to do something that you don't think is good. And, you know, don't worry about it being good. You know, just do it. It's worth doing, even if it's poor. Like I did it, my first, you know, draft, and it was like, it doesn't totally suck. Like it passed that, you know, the bar is very low. And then it's on edit 18 now. So, you know, just have that mindset, I think is really important. I don't write every day, but if that works for you, go for that. But yeah, having a plan, knowing, you know, where you're starting and how to get to where you want to go. And then don't worry about it. Don't edit while you're writing.
Yeah.
That's another important one. Because a lot of people will come to me and they'll be like, Scott, hey, you know, I'm working on the script. I got 15 pages done. Can you read it? You know, or another friend who's like writing a novel. Hey, I've got 20 pages. Can you read them? I'm like, yeah, but you know, I don't know. I do it because that's kind of how I'm wired. But I say to them, like, don't take any of my feedback and make any edits. Just keep writing. Keep writing. Get that first draft done. So
Yeah, we all three of us agree on that. Do not edit and rewrite as you go. Finish the draft first.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then this imaginary writer that I told you about, who just got the dream to write a screenplay. Let's say this person got that dream later on in life and they're feeling like maybe they're too old to start writing. What would you say to this hypothetical screenwriter?
You're never too old. Never too old to be writing. Writing, like we said at the beginning, is very therapeutic and very wonderful. So no matter whether you're doing it professionally or as a hobby, writing is so good for you no matter what. But we have quite a few writers in PSA and writers that I've met in classes over in LA. And they're older writers. And we have one writer currently who started writing his first screenplay in his mid-60s. And in the past 5 years, he's written over 19 screenplays. And he is hitting it big on all the competitions right now. And there's going to be some exciting news coming out about him, which we're not able to talk about. But no, you don't let your age ever be anything that ever holds you back from doing anything, especially writing. Writing is so good. Yeah.
Yeah, 100% agree. I mean, I was 58, 59 when I first started writing. And one of my favorite books or set of books of all time is by an author named Frank McCourt.
Angela's Ashes?
Angela's Ashes, Tis, and Teacher Man. And I highly recommend those books to people all the time. And I always tell them, get the audio version so you can hear his sweet Irish accent. But you know, Angela's Ashes, he wrote in his mid-60s, I believe, and won, you know, Pulitzer for it. It was his first novel, his first book ever. When the novel is about his life experience. So yeah, there's no age barrier. There's no age discrimination in the writing.
Okay, that's good. I'm glad you guys said that. I totally agree with everything that you just said. And like you said, Jessica, you can enjoy the benefits, that healing process at any age, and just the act of creation, that the personal satisfaction that comes from that, you can enjoy that at any age as well. So, yeah. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, especially as you get older, you know, a lot of people talk about to keep their mind young and active and so forth. Writing is one of the best mind exercises you can go through because you're constantly problem solving, figuring out your story, figuring out your characters, you know, doing some of what we call story math, which is figuring out, is the scene too long? Where are you going to cut it? And stuff like that. So writing actually is a good exercise to keep you very young.
Yeah, I do think writers make very good problem solvers. To be a good writer, I think you have to be a good problem solver.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And then there's this idea that what got you here won't get you there. So the idea that as you gain more experience, you have to change your strategy a bit potentially. So now I would love to know if you were talking to a more experienced screenwriter, so not a complete beginner, but someone who has more experience under their belt, would your number one tip change?
So for me, it would be, again, and every writer's different, just like Scott said, he doesn't necessarily write every day. For me, I would say continue to keep writing every day, read those scripts, especially where we just had the Oscars and the winning screenplays, read those to see, what is out there winning and getting recognition. And then get a lot of feedback on your script, whether you go to table reads, which they're absolutely phenomenal, or if you start a writer's group. A writer's group is 3 to 4 people. You don't want to go too far above that because you've got to be able to read everybody's script or their pages and then give feedback as well as get feedback on yourself. But I think as a seasoned writer, and as you're coming through that continual learning curve of writing, which is another great reason why writing is so wonderful. It isn't something that you will ever master. You continue to grow and get better and better and better. But hearing regular feedback on your writing for a seasoned writer is absolutely crucial, because by that point, you're wanting to understand the fine points, what's delighting your audience, what's holding them back. And you start to fix all those things and you start to recognize them in your writing. So for a seasoned writer, absolutely get regular feedback, and not from people that are going to tell you you're brilliant. You want people, your family and friends absolutely are going to tell you how wonderful you are because they love you very dearly, and as they should. But you want to also get it from folks that are not going to be brutal, but are going to be able to tell you, hey, guess what? This scene doesn't belong in this script, and here's why it's hanging me up on the story. Here's where I'm struggling with your story. That's beautiful feedback to get, because then you go back to the drawing board and you get creative in your mind and you start to problem solve. So for a seasoned writer, get that regular feedback.
And what about you, Scott? What would you say to a more experienced writer?
Yeah, I remember early on hearing, figure out what your lane is and go in that lane. Like, are you going to write rom-coms? You're going to write horror? You're going to write dramas? And like that felt, I don't know, restrictive. And I wasn't thinking I'm doing this as a career or even, even making any little money on it. And I just wrote what was in my heart, a story of pain and horror, which was a horror movie. And then I thought, well, then there's also, hope. And so my second one was like a romantic comedy. So I know that some people would say career-wise, you should find your lane, but working with Mitesh, our first movie was Instant Karma, which is a, magical adventure comedy. And then the next one that we're going to film next month, Woman in the Maze, is like a thriller horror genre. So I think because I'd written different types of screenplays before, it actually put me in a position to be able to write different things. So some people are razor focused on what's in interest to them, like I love horror movies, they're the best. That's all they care about. Well, then do what you love, if that's what you love. But I love good stories in any, genre. And so, as you keep going into it, figure out what you want it to be for you. For me, it's like, I don't want to write a specific genre. I want to just help create stories that are interesting and fun and you can learn something from. So figure out what's important to you the longer.
Okay, I have to say, for the record, I am one of those people that believes in the stay in your lane thing in order to get noticed initially. But I can also see the merit in saying, write the stories where your heart is, because that passion is also so important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like, seriously, I heard it a lot. So it doesn't surprise me that you would say the same thing. Like, I heard it a lot. And I was like, well, I wasn't writing for a career at first. I was just writing what was in my heart. And it put me in a position to actually have a little career in it. So it worked out for me in that way.
So in addition to writing in different genres, you're also very fast. You wrote the script for Instant Karma in a week.
Correct.
So what is your secret, Scott, to these very high levels of productivity?
That's a great question. I think, you've got those first 3 pages of the outline for Instant Karma. And that's kind of what we did. Like, I met with Mitesh. He started with a 1-page thing, gave it to me. We kept working on it. I would write something, give it back to him. A lot of times we'd meet and I'd read through it and he'd give me notes, and then I'd rewrite it and expand it. And then once I had that, I don't know, I just sits right here on my chair right next to my bed. And I just look over there, there's a new scene. I just write that. And there's a really great book, I think it's in my stack here, called by Stephen King, called On Writing.
Already.
Thank you.
Yeah.
On Writing. And I remember him saying that he believes that stories exist and we discover them, like create them. We discover them. So, you might see the tip of something sticking out of the dirt and say, oh, that's a Triceratops, it's a fossil. And then you start digging it up and it's like, oh, no, it's actually a T-Rex. But you had that little idea, that spark idea, and you just discover it. And so I just believe that the story's there. And when I get to the next scene, it kind of comes. And interestingly enough, and I've talked with my kids about this a lot, I can't visualize stuff. So I can't like close my eyes and picture a red car driving it. I just see darkness. Some people are like my daughter, like if she reads a book, she's picked like she's watching on a movie screen. I think some people are better at that. I don't have that skill or ability. And I'm glad that I can write without having that. My first draft that Jessica got to hear of Bring 'Em Back, I was writing everything that I was describing what I thought I should see in the scene. And once I realized I don't have to do that, then it got a lot quicker. So I don't know. I just believe the story's there. Once I have my outline, it comes off the outline onto the page.
Yeah, I think outlining is a big secret to becoming very productive, because not only do you know what you're going to write about when you have time to write, but then you can fix so many things in the outline that you save time in terms of rewriting once you have your draft finished. But I know, although I'm a big advocate for outlining, I also know that it's not everyone feels comfortable with it, which is a neat thing though for the outline that you provided, Scott, because maybe that level of detail in the outline, someone who thinks that they don't like outlining, maybe they'll see that level of detail is enough for them to know where the story is going, but they still have enough joy of discovery to enjoy the act of writing. And maybe they'll find that with the outline that you provided, which we're going to link to underneath this video.
Yeah, that would be great. I mean, the first 2 I did was using index cards for the different scenes. And so I just, working with Mitesh, we just kind of came up with the outline idea, and it's worked really well for me.
Yeah. I think the more level of detail you have in your outline, the faster and more efficient you'll be with your writing. But again, you have to be comfortable with that level of detail in order to use that as part of your process.
Correct.
And Jessica, you mentioned earlier you had a full-time job in corporate America while raising 4 children, one of whom required special medical attention. How did you juggle all of those responsibilities?
Well, I have a wonderful spouse. My husband, he is amazing. And so we were good partners together in raising those kids. But I think even if you have someone that's there to help you with the children, whatever that role looks like to help you, it's still a lot on your plate. And so for me, I was working in corporate America in various leadership roles, and I was either had a small office or I had a cubicle. And I remember when I first started screenwriting, I was writing my scenes down on these little cards, and then I'd come in the morning and I would pin all of them up on the wall of my cubicle or an office. And in between meetings, or when I had lunch, I was sitting there with my salad, eating it and looking at my scenes and trying to figure out which scenes were working, which ones I was going to write when I got home later that night, and so forth. But I think you have to be present in all of your roles. So, if you're at work, you get your work done and be able to leave it there so that when you come home, you're present for your family, build those memories, have those good times together, and then carve out that writing time. And then whether that's, for 30 minutes or 10 minutes or, whatever that looks like for you, and then shut the world out and just get into your story. And really give it that focus and sit down and build it. And creativity, a lot of people think, well, it's going to really drain me. Actually, it's kind of, for me, invigorating to be writing. I think even if I'm really tired, I just sit down and start working on whatever my current project is, or if I'm helping someone with their project. I feel more energized. It's kind of like a little pep pill, you just kind of get up and get going. So I think it's really just being present in each of your roles. Don't panic or worry about everything else. Be the very best that you can be at each of those roles, and then sit down with the writing and just have a blast with it. Writing is such a fun adventure.
Scott, was there anything you wanted to add to that?
No, I agree with what she says. The one thing I haven't mentioned is that I actually have a writing partner named Matt Midget, who lives in Virginia. And Matt wrote a screenplay years ago. And when I told him I was thinking about doing it, he was a big encouragement to me. And so when I got an opportunity to do it, I said, hey, do you want to be like a co-writer with me on this? And he said, yeah. And so even though I do the bulk of the writing, he always reviews it. He always gives me notes. And that's been very, very helpful. And I'm glad we've been able to share that journey together. I'm not sure if that's a good fit for everyone. Probably most people it might not be. But for me, it was just important. And one of the big influences for me in doing screenwriting is Mark and Jay Duplass, who are writers, actors, directors, producers, TV shows, movies, you name it. And they always talked about doing it together, doing it with their crew, doing it with their friends. And so that, I've been blessed to experience that, doing it with PSA, working together with Mitesh, working together with Matt, working with Jessica. That encourages me, because again, writing, you're sitting there, you're all alone. But to know that you're surrounded by a group of supportive, helpful friends drives you forward, helps you keep moving forward. When you do get stuck, when you do get discouraged, so that's another big thing that's been very helpful.
So both of you have gotten your foothold into the industry, and there are different ways to get that way in. And one of the ways that's often talked about is competitions. And both of you have had experience evaluating screenplays for the Chandler International Film Festival. So as a judge, what is something that you look for?
So I approach each script with an open mind, even if it's in a genre that I don't necessarily write in. But the same properties or components really apply in most genres, which is, are the characters interesting? Do I care about them? Is the conflict compelling? Is the main character active and participating and engaged in fighting for what he or she wants all the way through the script? And then is the ending satisfying? No matter whether it's an up ending or a down ending, do I really care? And did it satisfy me as a reader? Those are the key components that I look at. And again, keep a very open mind, because you may find genres that you at one time weren't too crazy about. And then all of a sudden you're like, wow, that's really a lot of fun. I'm going to start looking at more stories like that, or I'm going to start watching more movies or TV shows in that genre. So keeping that open mind, and then again, looking for the key components that make storytelling really fascinating. What about you, Scott?
Yeah, I would agree with all of those things. I just thought of one other thing about like the key to effective writing. It's a comfortable chair. I have a very, very comfortable chair.
So ergonomics are important.
Scott, yes, I like that one, especially if you're applying what they call the BIC principle, BIC, which is butt in chair.
Exactly.
Yes.
Having thumb glue, you got to sit in the seat, but having a comfortable chair. But I get up all the time when I'm writing. I get up, go to the bathroom, drink, all that stuff. But I think a good story has anticipation and uncertainty. And so I look for that in books, I look for that in TV shows, I look for that in movies. I just finished watching a really great series called 1883 on Paramount Plus. Oh my gosh, it was filled with that. Anticipation, uncertainty, anticipation, uncertainty. And I'm reading a book right now by Brene Brown, and she was talking about conflict and rising, when you fall, what the book was about. But one of the things she said is that oftentimes when you're in conflict and something happens with someone, you have an incomplete story about why they did that. What was their motive, intention? And our brains hate that. So we fill it in.
Yeah.
So the phrase she uses, the story that I'm making up in my head. But we don't say that when we confront the person. We're like, I can't believe you did that. You're so mean. You must hate me. You've always hated me. Instead of saying, hey, the story I'm making up in my head is that it seems like you've always hated me, which would actually lead to a little conflict resolution. But I thought about that with stories and movies and TV shows, and it's like we're constantly trying to do that, is like fill in the story. And so a good story doesn't give you everything at once, it spoon feeds you like a little bit, with all the stuff Jessica was talking about, there's stakes, there's character growth, and struggles, the character, he's going forward, he's overcoming, it's like, oh no, the all is lost moment, like it's not going to work out, he's blown it, he's ruined everything, but then the redemptive. And so like I'm reading screenplays, it's like, okay, am I into this? Are they bringing me on a journey that is interesting, that I care about, that I think it might go this way, but I'm not sure. When Jessica was talking about the ending, like if it's like, oh yeah, of course, like I saw that a long time ago, that's not very satisfying. But in romantic comedies, you kind of know they're going to get together at the end. So, but how are they going to get together? How are they going to overcome it? Stuff like that. The challenges they're going to face, the growth they're going to experience. So it's, reading screenplays in a contest is so valuable as a screenwriter, because you get to see some really good ones and a bunch that aren't so really good.
And then I always try and give feedback, and it depends on the different festivals and competitions, but I try and give the writers some feedback about what, and again, it's not a lot, but you give them, what worked really well in the script, what would be some things that they may want to consider to improve or work on, so that the writers still, whether they place or they don't, they still walk away with something. So I'm always, and I think, Scott, you do the same thing, right? Yeah.
It depends on the contest and what they're paying for and what they're going to get back. Sometimes they just get, selected or not selected. But yes, I was putting a lot of notes in when I was reading, and then I kind of realized that they weren't even going to see the notes. They were just internal, and which stopped doing that. But like some feedback, and in a positive, encouraging way. Like I spoke to a young student who's studying screenwriting in school in North Carolina, and she was interviewing me, and then she said, would you read some of my stuff? It's like, no, of course I would. And I read it, and and I was like, man, it needed a lot of work, but like there was so much I could encourage her about. Like, wow, so brave of you to write about this difficult topic that I knew was like, something she had gone through personally. And so always, say it in an encouraging way. It's important.
Yeah, I think that's really important to be encouraging when you're giving your feedback. And I think, Scott, you mentioned to me earlier in an email that the writer that came to you from American Pie, that he acknowledged, he was one of the guest speakers at PSA, that he acknowledged that there were challenges, but he made it feel doable. So kind of having that attitude when you're working with writers, yes, it needs work, but it's doable. You can get this done.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. And I would say when I'm working with writers all the time, I notice, Jessica, what you mentioned about having the protagonist be active throughout the story. That is a big issue. So I highly encourage all writers to check their screenplays for that, as well as the stakes, that they have the stakes, that they've raised the stakes, and that the stakes are in play until the end of the climax. And those are things that I notice all the time when I'm working with writers. So definitely, if you're entering a competition, check your screenplay for that. But competitions are only one way to get in. As we said earlier, there are many ways to break into the industry. What would you say is the best way, if you can? What would you say is the best way to break in?
So I think Scott and I both talked about, if you have a local filmmaker or a friend or someone that's making a film, absolutely ask if you can help out in any way possible. Be a production assistant or whatever that looks like. That gets your foot in the door, and people always remember that. But I think for me, because we're talking about writing here, is write the most amazing script out there. And you're going, okay, but how do I do that? Well, it's what we've been talking about all along, is learning the craft, reading other screenplays, the button chair, just get the writing done and keep working on it and getting regular feedback on it, and develop your voice through interesting characters, compelling conflict, and a clear and concise description of actions and so forth. The best calling card you can get out there to get into the industry is to have an amazing script, beautifully crafted. And that you'll get everyone's attention that quick, and then enter it into the competitions. We had Bob Sains, who was out here recently talking to PSA live. He was an amazing. We've had him out here twice now to talk to PSA, and he said, there's a lot of really good competitions out there. The 4 top ones that he highly recommended would be the Nichols Fellowship, and then the Austin Film Festival, Screencraft, and the Page. But I know we've had writers, and I know Scott's one of them too, that have had high success in a lot of the other competitions as well. But people, as much as you can generate that attention, and it all starts first with crafting that amazing screenplay and then getting it out there to the different competitions, you'll be amazed at how much attention you're going to get drawn to you and your script. What do you think, Scott?
Yeah, just restate the question once so I know exactly.
What do you think is one of the best ways to break into the industry, or actually the best way to break in?
It was best or easiest, so I wanted to make sure. The best way would be to be Steven Spielberg's nephew. Maybe that's the easiest way. I'm not sure. But it's not what you know, it's who you know, and this is an industry where that is very true, is relationships and stuff like that. So you can go to conferences and meet people. The conference I mentioned earlier I was at, I met Steven D'Souza. We're not best buds or anything, but it's a chance to rub elbows and socialize and interact. So conferences and stuff like that are really great opportunities. The other thing I would say is what Mark and Jay Duplass say all the time is make stuff. I think I mentioned to you in an email earlier, I just discovered Mr. Beast on YouTube.
Right.
And he's the biggest YouTuber in the world. He's 23 years old, and he's been doing YouTube since he was 11. And he's been making YouTube videos for more than half of his life, and he's 23. And he gets 100 million views, 200 million views on his videos, and he's just making stuff. And if you go back and look at his early stuff, like one thing he made, I watched recently, it was like, hey, this is a message to myself 5 years from now. And it was like a 2 or 3 minute video. And he's like, I hope you have 1 million subscribers from now, 5 years from now. If you don't, something went wrong. And he had tens of millions. Wow. he got better. He just kept working at it. He kept making stuff. And he also, with what we've already touched on earlier, he said he had a group of like 4 or 5 other guys that were making YouTube videos, and they were making them, and they were making mistakes. And he said, so instead of him making mistake once a week and learning from that, he had 5 guys that were each making a mistake once a week, different mistakes. And so he was learning 5 lessons a week instead of 1. So like, find a community to do it together and learn together, but make stuff. If you have an iPhone, make a short film. There's all kinds of contests and stuff like that if you want, but just make stuff. And as you make it, you just learn so much.
I think the point you made about how he was YouTubing when he was 11 years old and now he's 23. I think that also everyone who's hearing about Mr. Beast, he's an overnight success, 10 years in the making. And I think that's so true, that all the people that you hear about, it seems like all of a sudden they've actually been working for a long time. And so I think that's important for you to know, so that if you've been working for a while and you think, oh, it hasn't happened to me yet, realize that all the people that you've heard about, or I shouldn't say all, but a lot of the people you've heard about, they've been working for a long, long time, and they didn't give up. They always returned back to pursuing their dream, whatever it may be. And then I also wanted to say, Scott, that I heard the same advice echoed at the Austin Film Festival. If you can make a short, do it. And the consensus was basically like this, and I hope I'm representing this accurately, but that if you were cold querying a manager and you sent him a link to your short, he might actually click on it. But if you sent him a link to your pages, it probably wasn't going to happen. But because it doesn't take that much investment to watch something and to see also the proof of concept, not just of the story, but also as your skills as a writer, that it was a much more effective tool for them to gauge your writing ability. So that does give you, if you can get that, make that happen, I think that can give you a big advantage.
Absolutely. And it doesn't cost a lot of money. That's the other thing. Like, to make a short. Mark and Jay Duplass won the best short at the Sundance Film Festival with a movie called This Is John. And it was trying to leave an outgoing message on a voicemail machine and not getting it right and having an emotional meltdown. And it cost them $3 to make it, to buy a video cassette. And they made it in one day. And the second place in the short competition that year cost $250,000 to make. And so they were the darlings of the film festival, because it was like, oh my gosh, these guys made this incredible story and they didn't spend a lot of money on it. And it kind of launched them into their career. So making stuff.
So Scott, a couple of times you talked about the value of community. And I think that's really interesting, because James Clear in Atomic Habits, he makes the argument that in order to maintain the habit of writing, you have to have the identity of a writer, to see yourself as a writer. But at the same time, when you are connected with a community of like-minded individuals, that helps you reinforce your writing identity. And so if, I may be extrapolating here, but if you walk away from writing for whatever reason, but you're still part of that community and you see other people writing, that reminds you, yes, I am a writer too, and that gets you back in the game. And so that's why it's so valuable. Well, one reason why it's so valuable to join a writing community like PSA, the Phoenix Screenwriters Association, along with all the other amazing programs that you have. And so just to give our viewers a few more details about that, membership costs, I think, $40 a year. And then that gives you access to many of the programs that we talked about, plus a discount to the screenwriting software Final Draft. And then for the events with the guest speakers, members get a discount to those events. So you don't have to be a member to attend the events, but if you are a member, you get a discount off the admission, right? And then a lot of the events, PSA has adapted to the pandemic. So a lot of the events are hybrid, not all, but a lot of them are hybrid. So they have an in-person component, but they also have an online version. So you don't necessarily have to live in the Phoenix area to take advantage of the membership. So
that is correct. We even have people for our Writers Insights. So Arizona is now on Pacific time, so we're on California time. But I have writers from the East Coast, 3 hours ahead of us. that will come and be a part of, and they choose to stay up till midnight, and we always thank them for coming in. But yeah, the in-persons are absolutely wonderful, and we love those. But during the pandemic, we found out that we had a much larger audience than just Phoenix. So we're trying to take care of both our national and international audience, as well as our local audience too.
Scott, did you want to add anything to that or? No. Okay. So for everyone watching, if you want to learn more about PSA, visit the Phoenix Screenwriters.org. Is that correct? Yes, phoenixscreenwriters.org. And I'll also put a link to that underneath the video. And you can learn more about PSA, but you can also sign up for their free newsletter, which is so great because it tells you about future events that PSA is doing. It also links to some wonderful craft articles, many of which are written by Jessica. And my favorite feature is it tells you about what's happening around Hollywood. It kind of helps you keep tabs on the trades and what's going. So you get a good amount of information without having to invest your time to go looking for it on your own. So I think that's a really valuable resource, and that's free, and you can go to their website to sign up for that. But if viewers want to know more about you and what you're working on, what is the best way to do that?
So Scott?
Yeah, put my email in the below. They can email me or call me, either way.
All right.
And same thing with me as well. Most of my projects are in the works right now, although in the next 30 days, hopefully by this fall, I'll have a lot more to share as well. We're also on Meetup. So you just type in Phoenix Screenwriters Association, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We're also there as well. So we're pretty easy to find.
Okay. All right. So I will put your emails, I think, in the video if I can do that in post-production. And then that brings us to the end of our interview. And I just want to thank you both so much for spending your afternoon with me, and also to thank you for just giving us a really honest behind the scenes look at what it takes to get your foothold into the industry, and for sharing your stories with us, which I think are really inspiring. So I just want to thank you both so much.
Thank you, HR. This has been lovely. It's great to talk about screenwriting.
Yeah, I think that a lot of great insights I think our viewers are going to have from watching this interview. Did you want to add something, Scott? I cut you off.
Yeah, no, it's a pleasure talking with you and getting to know you, and thanks for this opportunity.
So I guess we will end it there. And I think it's safe for me to say on behalf of all of us that we wish everyone watching this to have much success on their own writing journeys. And we'll say bye.
Thank you.